The thing with Stevie is that long before I ever met him, I was a fan. He was just the first time that I was ever aware of him. I was living in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and my brother and I went to see one of those dopey beach party movies. So we're at the Lincoln Theater watching Muscle Beach Party, and all of a sudden here comes little Stevie Wonder.
Everybody sing out, yeah, 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 yeah. Hallelujah.
And I was just immediately captivated. You know, I mean, it just was just so much charisma and so much soul. And ever since then, I've followed his career, and I loved everything that I heard that came out. Uptight, I Was Made to Love Her.
You know my papa disapproved it. My mama boo-hooed it.
My papa disapproved it. My mama, she boo-hooed it. Signed, Sealed, Delivered. For Once in My Life. My Sharia More. You know, he just kept getting better and better and more sophisticated. And I was a fan. I loved him. So he's just been his music's been a fixture in my life for a long time. Oh, I don't know, it was 1978. I moved to Los Angeles. So I moved to LA, and I didn't know anybody, and I had an idea of getting a job in a music store. Find the biggest music store where everybody goes, and I'll meet people. And that's what happened. And what happened in this case was the same as with Michael Jackson. It was through Ronnie Foster. But what happened, how I met Ronnie, is, you know, Ronnie was another person that I was aware of before I actually met him in person. When I was going to college at the University of Wyoming, I bought his album Cheshire Cat on Blue Note. And what happened is, around the same time that I started working at Guitar Center, Ronnie moved from New York. He'd been living in New York City, but he decided to move to LA. And he got an apartment up on Hollywood Boulevard, not very far from Guitar Center. And he came in, I recognized him, we got to talking, and we just got to be friends. We'd jam in the keyboard department all the time, and we got to be such good friends that we'd hang out. I could just show up at his house and knock on the door, and he'd go, "Oh, Bill, come on in." We had a lot of good times. The manager of the keyboard department was a guy named Jackson Howe, who knew synthesizers in and out, and I learned a lot from him. And in the mornings when things were quiet was a good time to experiment with all the synthesizers they had there. And I learned a whole lot. One of the things that Jackson said, "Have you ever really looked at this ARP sequencer?" And actually I hadn't. But he said, "You know, this is cool because it does this and that and the other." And he explained the matrix, the gate selectors, and just all the different ways you could patch it, and the fact that you could use them, several of them, lined up together. And we started hooking every synthesizer in the keyboard department up to that, and we kept unboxing more sequencers because we needed, wait, if we have one more, we could do this. And we finally had this massive thing going on where there's like maybe a dozen synthesizers being controlled by 4 ARP sequencers. And I would play a solo against that background. Made a recording of it. I had a Sony reel-to-reel machine that I brought from home and recorded it. And you can hear that on my channel in its entirety. But I think that actually that video has gotten more plays on my channel than anything else, and it's just a live thing of me playing against all these sequencers in Guitar Center in 1979, I think it was by then. Ronnie liked that. I played him that. He said, "Make me a cassette of that." And so I did, and I didn't really think anything more of it. One day I'm working in the keyboard department, and they say, "Bill, you got a phone call on line 2." And I pick it up, and a voice says, "This is Stevie Wonder." And I said, "Ronnie, cut it out." I thought he was Ronnie playing a joke. You know, he could be a prankster. But he convinced me that no, it was actually Stevie Wonder. And Ronnie had played him the tape of the sequencers and me playing with them. And he wanted to know if I could set up a thing like that for a song he was working on his new album. And I said, "Yeah, of course I can. I'd love to." So I wound up checking out quite a few of those sequencers from Guitar Center with their permission, and wound up going to Irvine, where Stevie was recording what became the Secret Life of Plants album. And we set all that up with a zillion synthesizers being controlled by all these sequencers, and it was all had to be done at the same time, because I don't think at that time we had a way to record a time code that would so you could, you know, do them one at a time and get them all synced up again. You had to get it right and then hit the button and go. And what it was is you'd have one synthesizer, like an ARP 2600, that's just being the kick drum, and another one that's being the snare drum, another one the hi-hat, and on and on and on. And that became the rhythm track for his song Race Babbling. And he's the kind of guy that he immediately puts you at ease. And he's super intelligent. He really knows his way around synthesizers. I was surprised at how well he got around on the ARP 2600, being blind. He had no problem programming an ARP 2600. He knew that thing like the back of his hand.
By the shining Big Sea waters, stood the wigwam of Nokomis. Stevie, don't start pressing it. Slow down. It's magic, it's magic.
And he was so at ease in the studio because he'd been working there. He knew the layout, and he could just get up and march around. He didn't need a help. He knew where he was going. He didn't bump into things because he'd get the layout of a place pretty quickly in his mind, and then just off he goes. So at one point in time, he wanted to adjust one of the synthesizers, maybe say it was the kick drum, for example. I don't remember exactly what it was. He said, "I'm going to go, that kick drum needs to be a little better." I said, "Okay." So he got up from the control room and went into the studio, which is where all the synthesizers and sequencers were set up. But then once he was in the room, I'm still in the control room. By this time, I'm already, figured like, this guy, he knows what he's doing, and he doesn't need any help. But once he got in the studio, he didn't know which 2600 was doing it. And it was funny because he said, "Help me, I'm blind." He made a joke of it. So I got up and ran in there, and I said, "It's this one." And just put his hand on which 2600 was making the sound that he wanted to adjust, and then boom, he's like on it and got exactly, tweaked it exactly the way he wanted it to be. And it was a good time. We had fun working on that. He's a great guy. There's a saying that says you should never meet your heroes, but I've not had that experience in my life, because I've met several of my heroes, and it's all been wonderful. But with him especially, because not only, he was my musical hero, and somebody I really looked up to and still do, but we became friends right away. He's such a friendly, down-to-earth person. And he's an incredible. I have a hard time talking about him without just going overboard, but I've never met anybody quite like him. I mean, he's just extraordinary in every sense of the word. But that was the start, and it was, I'll never forget that night as long as I live. It was so much fun, but it was you know, it was amazing, and it was just the start. It was the start of a beautiful friendship, if I can steal a line from Casablanca, because we did become friends, and I worked more. We had more sessions at that studio in Irvine, and then we moved to the studio that Stevie bought on Western Avenue, and finished Secret Life of Plants there, and went on to work on Hotter Than July and other projects. And so I'll save those stories for another time. So now you know how I first came to know and work with this guy that I just love so much and have so much admiration for. So stay tuned. I'll have more Stevie stories. I got more stories of Michael. I got stories of my own career. Who knows if anybody cares about that. But thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, you know, do all that stuff. Wake YouTube up. Make the algorithm pay attention to what we're doing here. Impossible task, I know. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.